Woman, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Gino. Tonight, I really wanted to talk to all of you about the economy, national security, healthcare, and energy, real issues that affect real people. And hopefully, during the rest of this evening, I can. But first, I must tell you what I've recently learned about my opponent. Information that he has clearly tried to hide and that the local press has never investigated. Everything I tell you now is documented fact, and it's awful. When Dr. Ruiz was a student at Harvard, he led protests against the celebration of Thanksgiving. No joke. He led protests against Thanksgiving Day because he opposes what Thanksgiving stands for and what it represents. He even called for smashing Plymouth Rock, a symbol of America's freedom. He said, and I quote, "Crush this rock and all that it represents." Well, what it represents, Dr. Ruiz, is the dreams of people fleeing from tyranny and seeking freedom. Dr. Lee should also know that Abraham Lincoln established Thanksgiving to unite and to heal our divided country during the Civil War. But the truly disturbing part about Dr. Lee's left-wing protests was who he was demonstrating with and what he was demonstrating for. During one of these protests, Dr. Lee read a letter expressing support for Leonard Peltier, a man convicted of viciously slaughtering 2 FBI agents in South Dakota. When Leonard Peltier murdered them, the agents were wounded. They were defenseless and they were lying on the ground. One agent even lifted his hand to shield himself from the barrel of a gun. Leonard Peltier stood over him, pulled the trigger, and sent a bullet through his hand into the skull. This despicable crime was the work of the man Dr. Reese now wants released from prison. But there's more. During another protest, a different cop killer had a statement read calling Thanksgiving Day an American Holocaust. Dr. Reese's own organizational co-chair said, and I quote again, "The greatest single acts of terrorism to date were not perpetrated by Osama bin Laden, but by the U.S. military when it dropped atomic bombs on the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki." Another speaker praised their brothers in Afghanistan, Palestine, and Iraq. You get the idea that these kinds of protests, you know what they were. Dr. Reese participated and led them 6 years in a row, once even being arrested and charging the police falsely with brutality. Dr. Reese hid his past because he knew it would destroy his political future. The local press has to explain why they refused to investigate and report on his background. I urge you to go online, look up these facts for yourself, Google it, and I'm sure you will be as appalled and as outraged as I am.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you for that. We are underway. Time now to get down to the questions and answers. Erica Felty, you have the first question today.
Thank you. Dr. Ruiz, in a recent television ad, you vowed to voters that you, quote, will never vote to cut Medicare or Social Security. Not once, not twice, never. Officials under the Obama administration have argued the existing programs are fiscally unsustainable. Do you think you're being disingenuous to voters when you promise not to support any cuts? And if you hold true to your pledge, how else do you plan to save the two programs?
I appreciate that question, Erica, but Congresswoman Bono Mack made some very, very strong accusations during her opening statement. And so what I want to say is, Congresswoman, my mother makes a wonderful Thanksgiving turkey, and I would love to invite you to our Thanksgiving celebration this year. You see, what's shameful, Congresswoman Bono Mack, is that you are calling me anti-American for celebrating our Native American heritage, for giving voice to our Native American cultural roots and the first Americans so that their voice can be a part of our American story. Here's the facts. The facts was that an elder by the name of Sam was going to be beaten. And so I shielded him with my body, and I got beaten and pepper sprayed myself. And I got arrested. The city dropped all the charges, and they paid $100,000 in scholarship funds for Native American students. And they erected 2 plaques for commemorating Native American heritage. Congresswoman, your father and my 2 uncles fought in wars so that we can have those freedoms to give voice. You mentioned Leonard Peltier. I am not a supporter of Leonard Peltier, and I do not support anybody who murders any FBI agent. And if they do, they should be convicted to the fullest extent of the law. She mentioned 9/11 attacks and Hiroshima bombs. I did not make those comments. But people are tired of guilt by association politics. In fact, are we to assume that just recently you took an award from an organization that minimizes domestic violence and believes in legitimate rape, where the actual president has said that the women's battered movement has outlived its time?
Okay, Doctor, I'm going to stop you there. Your time is up. You didn't answer the question. Congressman, would you like a chance to speak for a minute on the subject that's on the table, or should we just move on with the questions?
Well, can we do both? I would love to respond to that, and I think talk about it, the importance of Medicare.
We will also talk about Medicare. Doctor, could you please answer the question?
Repeat the question, please.
In a recent television ad, you vowed to voters that you, quote, will never vote to cut Medicare or Social Security. Not once, not twice, never. Yet many experts and even officials under the Obama administration have argued the existing programs are fiscally unsustainable. Do you think you're being disingenuous to voters when you promise not to support any cuts? And if you hold true to your pledge, how else do you plan to save the two programs?
Over 50% of my patients in the emergency department use Medicare, and I know very, very well how important Medicare is to them. Now, Medicare is America's promise to our seniors, and if you work hard and pay your taxes, when you become a senior, you will be guaranteed medical coverage. Now, Congresswoman Bono Mack has broken that promise not once, but twice. You see, she wants to turn Medicare into a private voucher coupon care-like system that would cost seniors $6,000 out of pocket a year. That is way too much for our seniors today. So instead of tackling our healthcare costs and our deficit, she wants to put the burden of those costs on the shoulders of our seniors. Now, I'm sure she's going to talk about Obamacare and make the claim that it cut $716 billion.
Let's give the Congresswoman a chance here, but
Thank you, Gino. May I just understand briefly, since you had two questions, so I have two separate 1-minute responses.
if you like, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. First of all, you were there, Dr. Reese. You know exactly what you did. It's written in multiple stories, including in the Boston Herald, about your antics. It's actually still today on websites of the foundation that you used to co-chair. So on your own website that you co-chair right now, the data still exists about your antics, what you said, and what you did. You cannot deny that you walked people to Plymouth Rock and said, crush this and all that it stands for. I do believe you owe an explanation to the American people about what you said. Also, Erica Felci, I don't quite understand the reporting here for the life of me, but you, when you were interviewed at the time about this protest, which, by the way, the police say you were belligerent, you then said, oh, I was just protecting children from being pepper sprayed. But the story you say today is you were protecting an elder named Sam. Dr. Louise, who are you really? Because we don't know who you are. You know, furthermore, in 2002, when you were co-chairing this event, we had troops in harm's way in Afghanistan. You know, you stood there, your organizational co-chair said, we stand with our brothers in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he did not mean the American troops. If you'd like to denounce that, then good for you, but the record shows you have six-year history of these protests.
All right,
Secondly, Medicare. You want to talk about throwing around little interesting factoids. He is clearly taking his talking points for the DCCC, and yes, you're right, Nancy Pelosi. As a matter of fact, Dr. Ruiz's ad claiming exactly what he just said here on the stage was called one of the biggest whoppers of the year. Dr. Ruiz, look, Medicare, you cannot deny, is going broke. You know, one would think that even in your position, you would recognize that, you know, we do have a promise to our seniors. We have said, anybody in Medicare now, anybody 55 and over, would remain in that system of Medicare. But you know something? This isn't just about seniors. It's about the totality of our nation. It's about our children and our grandchildren. What you find is acceptable is that everything we do today is borrowed 40 cents on the dollar. It is put on a credit card that future generations are going to have to pay for. You know, I have the most beautiful grandbaby in the world. And yes, I think about my grandparents. I think about my late grandparents, my late parents. I think about my seniors. And I think about my children and my grandchildren.
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman. I would like to remind the candidates that the format for today is we ask the questions, you guys answer, and we don't address questions to one another. We'll give you plenty of time to respond to her response in your closing statements if you like. We're going to move on now to the next topic.
I believe I have a rebuttal.
That was actually originally your question, and Mary had the rebuttal. I'm sorry, you're right, and you have 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Congresswoman Bono Mack, there was a full investigation and the charges were dropped. And those statements that other people made, I didn't make those statements. Therefore, if you believe that I made those statements, other people who make statements on your behalf, believing in the concept of legitimate rape, that's horrible, Congresswoman Bono Mack. That is horrible. The way we're going to protect Medicare, Erica, is by tackling the real problem, which is healthcare costs. Not turning it into a voucher system and making our seniors pay for it. But that's allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies, and that's also to decrease the amount of unnecessary procedures and redundant tests that we have now.
Doctor. The next question now goes to Elizabeth Bobian, please.
All right, Congresswoman, both of you have spent time at the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership and courted votes from the small business community. In October 2009, the partnership unveiled an unprecedented blueprint that determined the valley's need to diversify its economy. What role does the federal government have in creating those jobs? How do you get your congressional colleagues to support that effort?
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a great question, and I am happy to always work with CBEF, and I applaud them for the great work they do. I'd like to point out one specific example of somebody who benefited in this congressional district from the work that I did. From a bipartisan bill that I passed and signed into law. It was actually signed by President Obama. Very bipartisan bill. Actually, almost all of my bills are bipartisan. If you go to Coin Motorsports in India right now, ask them about the bill that I passed that improved the Consumer Product Safety Commission and the rules and the regulations that they have to live under. Go there and ask. Or go to any of the growers out here in the desert. Ask them about the country of origin labeling bill that I was able to pass and have signed into law. I felt that if the American farmer had the opportunity to simply say on their produce, grown in the USA, product of the USA, that people would actually buy their produce. I believe that also saved American jobs. Happy to say that I've had a congressional hearing promoting tourism, not just here in the Coachella Valley, but throughout my congressional district and throughout the country. I had Scott White from Convention and Visitors Bureau come testify before the Congress to share his expertise on tourism. Tourism and agriculture are our most important industries here, and I fight very hard for them. I always have. I have a very strong record of achievement on their behalf, and will continue to do just that.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. Dr. Rees, you have 1 minute.
Yes, Congresswoman, I remember this commercial back in, I believe, the 80s where there was a little lady that said, where's the beef? I just want to say, where's the job? Everything you listed is a failure to deliver in jobs right here at home. In fact, you have voted to give tax breaks to corporations who ship jobs overseas and for subsidies for big oils. And you have actually taxed our job creators. Under the Ryan Plan, you voted to increase taxes for the middle class. In order to create jobs right here in our district, we need to decrease taxes on our middle class and small businesses. And we're poised with the new UC Riverside School of Medicine, which I helped to bring to this area, to have medical research and biotechnology and diversify our economy. And I worked with CVEP in helping them develop their pipeline program for our students in order to get jobs. Those same students that you voted to cut their Pell Grants and their Safford loans.
All right, thanks, Doctor. Congresswoman, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Thank you. Folks, it is really sad to hear what Dr. Rees is saying. Do me a favor. Go to Coin Motorsports in India and ask them yourself. Just go up. Just one day go by. Look at their fine products. Ask them, did Mary Bono Mack help save jobs? Hear what they have to say. Why don't you go speak to some of our growers like Mike Bozick or the Bozick family or so many of the other growers and ask them, did country of origin labeling help to save jobs? Has it helped in agriculture? And just one quick thing, UC Riverside Medical Center, I was on board from day one.
All right, thank you so much. We stay with Elizabeth Bobian for the next question.
All right, Dr. Ruiz. An estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants are living in the United States. A recent study by UC Berkeley and the field poll found 67% of Californians feel the federal government should offer a path to citizenship if they meet certain requirements. Do you agree? And if you do, what requirements would need to be included in that pathway? If you disagree, what would you propose to be done to address the undocumented immigrants who are already here?
Now, I am not for amnesty. I am for an earned path to citizenship. But this is a clear example of how Congress is broken and how Congresswoman Mary Bono Mack has had 14 years to lead and she's failed to deliver. She'll talk about how important immigration is to the district, which it really is because our economy depends on it with our tourism, our agriculture, and our construction. This is what we need in a comprehensive immigration reform. We need to secure our borders with more agents and more technology. We need to make sure that our economic industries that we thrive on with agriculture, construction, and tourism can have the labor pool that they need. And we also need to create an earned path to citizenship that respects the laws. One of the things that I would vote for is the DREAM Act, because these are children that for no fault of their own find themselves here following our rules, going to their schools, graduating, risking their lives for our country and for us and our freedoms. Congresswoman Bono Mack has failed to lead in this example. In fact, she has voted against the DREAM Act.
Dr. Ruiz, thank you for that. Congresswoman, you have 1 minute to reply.
Thank you. Quickly, my stance on immigration is the same as it was 2 years ago. It's a very logical stance on immigration. I think it's important we enforce our borders, both our northern and our southern, as well as our seaports and our airports. I believe we need strong interior enforcement mechanisms. And I believe we also do need a non-amnesty, robust guest worker program for people to use to be employed in the United States of America. But let me just say something about the DREAM Act and about, although Luis tends to forget that President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid had the perfect trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the White House. They had 2 years to pass comprehensive immigration reform. They did nothing. They didn't have a single bipartisan meeting at the White House to even discuss the topic. I, too, support the DREAM Act. I do not support, once again, President Obama doing what he likes to do with his czars and an executive order on the DREAM Act. That, I support the concept of the DREAM Act, absolutely. There are parts of it in his executive order that I have problems with.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ruiz, 30 seconds.
Congresswoman Bono Mack, you're not running against Nancy Pelosi. And this is precisely the language of gridlock that is evident as to why we have a do-nothing Congress. Now, one of the things that we have to do is to realize that Congresswoman Bono Mack has failed to lead. She talks a big game, but she has failed to deliver time and time again. And her language, when she attacks and attack and attack, is very cognizant, is very real for what is wrong with Congress.
All right, Dr. Ruiz, thank you so much. The next question now goes to Erica Felty. Erica.
Thank you. Congresswoman, in your last debate, you refused to disclose your personal thoughts on California's Prop 8, which bans same-sex marriage. Instead, you repeatedly said this is a state and not a federal issue. But now that it is being looked at by the federal courts, it has become a federal constitutional issue that has national implications on the legality of same-sex marriages. After all these years, don't you think Coachella Valley residents deserve to know where you stand on the issue? Bottom line, should same-sex marriages be banned at either the state or the federal level?
Thank you, Erica, for the question. And I will get to it, but I do need to go back to one thing that Dr. Ruiz has said. It is critically important that people recognize a vote for Dr. Ruiz is a vote for Nancy Pelosi. The very first vote Dr. Ruiz would take in the Congress would be his vote to confirm Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Very important people understand that. But back to the question of same-sex marriage, and I know, Eric, you bring this up every time you can. Look, my family, it's clear where I am with my family. It's always been clear. There's been no greater supporter of a loved one in a family than I have been. My now transgendered stepson, Chaz Bono, we have a very close, wonderful, loving relationship. It is clear that I have a big heart and I don't have a bigoted bone in my body. But you know something, I have said this because you in the Desert Sun 2 years ago tried to pigeonhole me into taking a position on a state issue. It was on a state it was not a federal issue up for me to decide. And I said then, and I say now, look at my history. I have twice voted against constitutional amendments banning same-sex marriage. That speaks for itself. Further, my family was a modern family before there even was a modern family. And don't ask, don't tell. I voted against the first one because it's a purely Nancy Pelosi political vote. But you know what? I supported Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, this past week when I was up at 29 Palms visiting our troops because I've always supported them and I always will. I asked the question, has there been a problem with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell? I was so happy to hear them say universally, no, there have been no problems with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. Dr. Ruiz, you have 1 minute.
Congresswoman Bono Mack has gone to Washington. In fact, she thinks she's here with Nancy Pelosi. So one of the things that we need to really see that this is another example of failed leadership. She dodged the question. She must be really good at dodgeball because that was a real good dodge. The other thing is this, that there are 1,000 people in this district that this is very important issue for. Now, I believe that marriage equality is a right. I believe in marriage equality because I'm against any form of discrimination, whether gender, race, or the person that you love. And anybody who loves each other, who wants to be in a committed, loving relationship, should have the right to marry. Now, Congresswoman, right here, yes or no, you have thousands of residents who want to know if you believe in their right to marry.
Dr. Ruiz, you must have me confused with Supreme Court Justice. I am not that. This decision it is in the courts, it will make its way through the courts, and it will wind up in the Supreme Court of the United States of America. If you want to ask a question, though, of things like defensive marriage, I have a very clear record on these things. I have a clear record on that. I have a clear record on non-discrimination in the workplace. I have a very clear, staunch record with these issues. You know, it is so sad that somebody like you always seeks to divide people rather than unite them.
Okay, Congresswoman, thank you for your rebuttal. We'll move on now with Erica Felty, the next question.
Dr. Ruiz, security concerns in Libya have made it difficult for the United States to figure out exactly how the ambassador and other Americans were killed. Both you and your opponent denounced the attacks, but you've kept quiet on whether President Obama has been taking the appropriate steps. What do you think of the White House's response? And what do you think is America's role in stabilizing the region to make it safe again?
Now, I firmly believe that America is the beacon of democracy and are the leaders of the free world. I firmly believe that our priority should be the security of America and Americans around the globe and our friends Israel and all of our allies in the area. And once this becomes an issue an issue where we start to focus on the terrorist acts around the world, and we start to realize that our troops need more than lip service by Congresswoman Bono Mack. We need to make sure that we protect America and Americans, and we honor our troops. Now, she's talked about how she supports our troops, yet she has decreased millions of dollars of health and mental health for them. She has cut the ability for the families of soldiers who have died to stay in their homes. She has voted against the Veterans Benefits Bill, and she's voted against the post-9/11 GI Bill. And she's voted not to increase combat pay for our combat soldiers. All of this at the same time that she has voted 9 times to increase her own pay. I just couldn't let you get away with that, Congresswoman Bono Mack.
All right, Congresswoman, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I sure wish I had a lot more time to talk about this than that. But once again, this is very sad. I do not know who Dr. Ruiz is, but I can tell the audience all of this information about what he stood for 6 years when he demanded that we smash Plymouth Rock. That will be online by the end of the night. If it's not already, please go to it and look it up yourself. But let me just say this about Libya. Let me say how important this is, not just what happened, but why it happened. First of all, Ambassador Stevens wrote. He wrote to the Secretary of State. He wrote to others. He said, I am concerned about our safety. I am concerned because I know that there are al-Qaeda cells here in Libya and I do not feel safe. Those pleas were ignored. But the biggest problem is not just what happened, but why it happened. This White House and people like Dr. Ruiz, who are sympathizers and apologists for the greatness of America, they believe that actually if we apologize to our opponents, if we're just nice to them, they'll be nice to us in return. Because of this, our country is less safe It is a much dangerous place today than it was 4 years ago.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. Dr. Ruiz, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Congresswoman continues to speak the language of gridlock. This is clear evidence why Congress is broken. Now, over and over, she will repeat this incident in the city of Plymouth, and it's a shame. It is a shame. It is a shame.
6 years, Doctor.
It is a shame that you are
6 years.
trying to make me seem
6
as
years.
anti-American.
6
You
years.
see, because the
6
beauty
years.
of America, for which your father and my two uncles went to war for, was to protect our ability to give voice to our Native American heritage, to give them a voice in our American story, Congresswoman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Elizabeth,
All right,
you have the next question.
Congresswoman, this is for you. 2 years ago, you told the Desert Sun that it was, quote, in our best interest that the United States remain in both Iraq and Afghanistan. But last month, you told the veterans in San Jacinto that if President Obama couldn't outline a clear and concise explanation of why troops remain in Afghanistan, then the U.S. should, quote, get the hell out. What prompted such a change in perspective? And if the U.S. pulls out immediately, how do you address concerns that the enemy will fill the void?
Let me just go back to a little bit more thorough reporting than that. What I did say, and Erica was there, what I did say was that as long as as long as President Obama cannot articulate to the American people why we are there and what we are doing, but allowing our troops to flounder because he feels comfortable because he's given a timeline for withdrawal. That troubles me greatly. I say under this presidential leadership, yes, I am concerned about our troops being deployed in Afghanistan. Absolutely. But you know what else troubles me about this timeline of President Obama's, which is an arbitrary political timeline? He didn't get that from the generals. He got it from his political advisors. Let me tell you, it troubles me the most. You know, I think women are more concerned about security than anything else right now. Nobody. And I have to tell you, last night I was a little bit dismayed. I thought after Joe Biden was defending Iran and even Paul Ryan's answer on this was really a little bit incomplete for me too. Nobody has said to the American people, what I need to know, when we pull out our troops from Afghanistan, are we safer off as a nation than when our troops were there? Will al-Qaeda once again have the ability to take root in Afghanistan and once again launch a terrorist attack against us? He needs to answer that question. He doesn't care. All President Obama wants to do is have a political timeline because it makes him feel good.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you. Dr. Ruiz, you have 1 minute to reply.
Yeah, she once again speaks a big game, but has failed to really lead in this manner. One is you voted to get us into Iraq, and President Obama got us out, and also he killed Osama bin Laden. And Al-Qaeda right now is the weakest it's ever been. But we cannot let our guard down. We have to go after the terrorists and make sure they never strike again. And we have to ensure that there are no growing cells anywhere in the world and make sure that we have our resources there. Now, she talks about our veterans and our soldiers. We need to bring home our troops from Afghanistan, but more importantly, we need to respect our troops that are in combat and harm's way. You voted to freeze their combat pay. You said no to an increase in pay for our soldiers who risk their lives for us, yet you voted 9 times to increase your pay.
Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Congresswoman, you have 30 seconds.
I might have voted no on a bad Democrat bill. As we all know, not all bills that come out of Congress are good. My overall record is absolutely supporting our troops and an increase in pay. Absolutely. But what startles me and frightens me about you too, Dr. Ruiz, is this. We are not safer today because Osama bin Laden is dead. You and your sympathizers would like to say that we are, but Libya is proof that we are not. President Obama, yes, would like to tell the American people everything's cool now. That is why they lied about the cover-up in Libya. That is why they denied the fact that it was a terrorist attack in the beginning. That is why they blamed America and American film, stupid film, I would add, but that is why they blamed the film.
Right,
they blamed America before they blamed the terrorists.
All right, thank you so much. We'll continue now with Elizabeth Bobian.
All right, another question for you, Dr. Ruiz. In 1998, the first year the Congresswoman was elected, then House Speaker Newt Gingrich pledged to save the Salton Sea. Yet supporters of the long-stalled restoration efforts have admitted that lawmakers have not made enough progress. We've not heard you address the issue on the campaign trail. What would it take to move the issue beyond just rhetoric and empty promises? Is there a point where the federal government seizes control of the project? Dr. Ruiz?
Thank you for bringing up the Salton Sea because it really brings very pleasant memories of my father taking me to the Salton Sea to fish and having picnics with the family. And now we're seeing dead fish and the stink that is unbearable. And this is somewhere where Congresswoman has failed to deliver. She continues to talk a big game. She promised in her first election that she would fix the Salton Sea. 14 years later, it has not been fixed. I don't know what stinks more, a broken promise or the Salton Sea. In fact, this is a great opportunity right now for us to revive that Salton Sea so that we can have it as a hotspot for tourism, so that other children can fish with their fathers, so that we can develop geothermal energy and boost our economy. And the way we're going to go about doing it is public-private partnerships with local input and authority so that we can come together and stop this bickering and tax talk and all this other stuff that Congresswoman Bono Mack is so adept at and skilled, but really come up with some problem-solving solutions. And that's what's missing in Congress, and that's what's missing in Congresswoman Bono Mack.
All right, thank you, Dr. Reese. Congresswoman, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Let me go to this constant bickering that I'm hearing about bickering. You've done nothing, Dr. Ruiz, at all to take responsibility. You haven't even had a plan for the Salton Sea until now that it's been asked of you. You know, clearly you don't understand the complexities of the sea. I would actually love to know what your thoughts on the quantification settlement agreement. How do we unravel that quantification settlement agreement? How do we take control from the state of California? This is what it's all about, Dr. Ruiz. I and others, including partners like Senator Feinstein, Senator Denise Ducheney, have also been working very hard on the Salton Sea. There's no question that the time is of the essence. Next year, the water transfers go into effect. Right now is our opportunity to finally get the support of neighboring communities all the way to the city of Los Angeles. I've called for 2 congressional hearings as soon as possible into the matter of the Salton Sea. But Dr. Ruiz, you know, this thing you're bickering about bickering is really getting old. I'd actually like to point to people who have... Thank you.
All right, Dr. Ruiz, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, this is another example of a failed promise and failure to lead. She's had 14 years, and she's still talking about the same thing. Nothing has happened. Nothing's got done. The other thing is, you know, and I think one of the reasons is because you're so out of touch. You're so out of sight. You're harder to find in Waldo, you know, unless people pay to see you. It's very difficult. So we have to make sure that we have true leadership and bring people together in a forum, you know, so that we can start solving this problem.
All right, thank you so much. We're continuing along now. Eric, I'll to the next question.
Congresswoman, the tenor of this campaign has certainly changed in recent weeks. Dr. Ruiz's campaign has painted you as an out-of-touch bureaucrat who shows disdain for the district by joking with a radio host who described East Valley Squalor as a third world toilet. In turn, you've described Dr. Ruiz as further to the left than House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and recently uncovered that Ruiz was arrested while protesting Thanksgiving in college. Do you think you've been unfair in your portrayal of your opponent? And how do you respond to the attacks on your own character?
Thank you, Eric. A great question. As I said in my opening statement, I thought we'd go into this debate simply debating the issues. But clearly, Dr. Ruiz's character is definitely worth looking at. I'm very, very frightened by what I've seen. He said it was an incident a few moments ago, that he had an incident. He had 6 years where he led protests demanding that people crush Plymouth Rock and all that it stood for. By the way, I'm wondering, even to the press, I'll ask the question. He said it was police brutality, it was their fault, they were the bad guys, they were the aggressors, but then he signed. And we have the signed statement from Dr. Ruiz that retracted that there was no police brutality. I don't know who he is. This, to me, is critically important. And let me explain to people why this matters, other than the fact that, yes, he said crush Plymouth Rock and all that it stands for and led these protests. Questions come up when you're a member of Congress that are critically important. Questions like this. Do you support reading a terrorist his Miranda rights? That's one. Another one, do you support trying a terrorist in the city of New York? That's two. These are very important questions. The character that Dr. Ruiz has exemplified during his 6 years at Harvard Medical School are very troubling. It absolutely is important that the people of this district know who he is.
All right, Doctor, 1 minute.
You know, she says she wants to talk about the issue, and her opening statement was pretty much a complete accusation, and she's sticking to this accusation, which is completely false. Congresswoman, read the investigation. Okay, I got arrested for protecting a Native American elder named Sam Sapio. Now, the other thing is that all the charges were dropped. The city paid $100,000 for Native American scholarship funds. They erected 2 plaques in commemoration of Native American heritage. You have shown disdain with your language. You bring up something in the past to cover up your disdain of the present. You laughed at the poverty of people in your district and called it a third world toilet. You show disdain to our seniors, our middle class and students, and now Native Americans. I'm appalled. You want to charge our seniors $6,000 a year for a private voucher coupon care for their Medicare. And now you're running away from that. You also tax the middle class under the Ryan Plan. That is disdain today.
Okay, Dr. Ruiz. So do you want a 30-second rebuttal on the tenor of the campaign?
Of course I do. This is critically important. Dr. Ruiz, was there police brutality or was there not? Was it an elder or was it a child? These things, folks, are in the press. They are in the Boston Herald. They are in the Harvard newspaper. They are documented. They are written. They are spelled out for people to see. It is critically important that people know that who he's saying he is right now is not who he is. Further, what I said in that email message was that the city councilman from Duroville should have been held accountable for allowing Duroville to be the third world condition that it was and that it continues to be.
Right,
if not, have your party release the entire interview. You haven't done that, Dr. Ruiz. Release the transcript of the interview that exonerates me.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. We're down to the final couple questions now. Elizabeth Bobian, you have the floor.
All right, Dr. Ruiz. In 2010, a bipartisan federal commission unveiled a plan to cut the nation's deficit by $4 trillion through a mix of tax increases and spending cuts. The Bowles-Simpson plan was never voted on in Congress. Do you agree with any or all of what the commission came up with? What other efforts do you think the country needs to take on to cut the country's debt, which now exceeds $16
The debt and our deficit are very important issues that we need to tackle, and they're a matter of national security. And this is one of the starkest contrasts between Congresswoman Bono Mack and myself. You see, Congresswoman Bono Mack wants to put the deficit and the burden of our debt on the shoulders of our seniors, our middle class, and our students by turning Medicare into a private voucher system and charging our seniors $6,000 a year for their health care costs on average, by cutting Pell Grants and SAFR loans to our middle class students who rely on those financial aid for their services and also for their college education. And she's voted to increase taxes on the middle class through the Ryan Plan. All of this in order to keep tax breaks for multimillionaires and tax breaks and subsidies for corporations who ship jobs overseas. We're going to reduce the deficits by bringing home our troops from Afghanistan, by making sure that we create jobs right here in the district, by making sure that we decrease taxes on the middle class and small businesses, and by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices with our pharmaceutical companies so that we can tackle the real problem, which is our healthcare costs, and eliminate unnecessary procedures and redundant tests.
Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Congresswoman, you have 1 minute.
I don't think he understood the question because what he just said, he's going to reduce the debt by not having so many medical tests, which, by the way, is a major part of Obamacare. Obamacare is what cut Medicare by $716 billion. Let me just tell you a few specific things that I would do immediately to cut the debt. First of all, I would repeal Obamacare as quickly as possible. Secondly, I would defund the high-speed rail of Central California, which nobody wants, nobody thinks we can afford, nobody wants to pay for it. I would look for agencies like the NEA and PBS and yes, say, it's time for you to make it on your own. Not only that, I would do everything we could, again, get that debt down, lower those interest rates, lower the interest that we're paying every single day. Everybody pays that, the middle class, every single person, senior, young, and old. But I'm just tired of hearing out of Dr. Ruiz, it's always one group of people against another. We can save Medicare, Dr. Ruiz. I know we can save it. We can save it for this generation. We can save it if you're 55 and over. But you know what else, Dr. Ruiz? we can save it for our generation and our children's generation and our grandchildren's as well, but not by ignoring the problem.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. Dr. Ruiz, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Congresswoman Bono Mack thinks that the idea of saving Medicare is to charge our seniors, and she's made this statement about Obamacare cutting $716 billion in Medicare benefits. That's simply not true. They were cost savings. In fact, Congresswoman Bono Mack voted for those exact same savings under the Ryan plan. And in the words of President Clinton, it takes some nerve to attack something that you voted for yourself. Now, what we need to do, and this is a clear example, she wants to balance the deficit on the shoulders of our seniors, middle class, and our students while protecting tax breaks for multimillionaires and corporations that ship jobs overseas.
All right, Dr. Ruiz, thank you so much. We go to the last question of the night. Erica Phelps, you have the honors.
Congresswoman, critics have described both of you as politicians who will simply vote in lockstep with your political party leadership. Can you name some policies that President Obama has implemented that you support? And Dr. Ruiz, when it's your turn, can you name some policy points where you disagree with President Obama?
Thank you, Erica. Sure. I support the bills that I passed out of the House and got passed out of the Senate and made it to Obama's desk and then he signed into law. Again, Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act is one. I support other bills that I have passed that he has supported. But let me tell you, it's a lot easier for me to say what I don't support. We haven't talked about energy. I need to get energy in because it's so critically important. So I am going to pivot. President Obama wants to kill the Keystone Pipeline. How in the world is he going to increase our energy supply by killing the Keystone XL pipeline? Explain me that. So yes, I disagree with him wholeheartedly on that. Let me tell you something else. President Obama does not meet with the Congress. He doesn't even meet with Republicans. He doesn't talk to Republicans. When they passed Obamacare, they did it without any Republican votes. They actually made a point when I said to my colleagues, I would love to work with you because a lot of the parts of health care improvement I believe in. You know what was said to me by one of my colleagues? Are you kidding? If Nancy Pelosi knew I talked to you, she would kill me. That is what we're up against. Let me tell you, do I support a lot of Obama's initiatives? No. So let me tell you a very important vote I plan on casting tomorrow on the absentee ballot will be for Mitt Romney.
Okay. Congressman, thank you very much. Dr. Ruiz, you have a minute, and you can talk about either things you would support or things that you would not support.
This is a very important question, and I really want the people who have been viewing this debate tonight to really see that she has clearly demonstrated why Congress is broken. Imagine working in a committee with this type of language and language of gridlocks and attacks. Now, I do not believe that we should eliminate the Bush tax cuts for those that make over $250,000 a year. We should eliminate those only for those making $1 million or more. I also don't agree with President Obama increasing the premiums for our veterans in their TRICARE insurance. You see, this is something that's very important. Congresswoman Bono Mack has gone Washington. She speaks her party line like no other. And I am not running for the Democratic Party. I am not running for Nancy Pelosi or President Obama. I'm running for you, right here in this district. As a public servant, I will always run for you. And she continues to ask, who am I? I was humbly given the Person of the Year by the Desert Magazine. I was given the Humanitarian of the Year by the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce. I have always been a public servant and stood up hard for the residents of this district, and I will do so for our seniors, our middle class, and our students right here.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Congresswoman, you have 1 minute for this rebuttal.
Oh, thank you. I actually don't know quite what to say to that rebuttal because I have no idea what he stands for. He's saying something here again today, but folks, please go online and research it for yourself. I mean, it really is appalling that all of the research and the data about who you were, again, let me remind people, 2002, Dr. Ruiz, you led a protest while we had our troops in Afghanistan. 2002, your cohort said, we stand with the people of Afghanistan and Palestine. Is that worth smiling about, Dr. Ruiz? I don't think it's worth smiling about, but I think that's very, very, very serious. People need to know that. it is important to recognize your very first vote, unless you want to say otherwise, and I'll gladly defer the time to you, that your very first vote would be for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. Is that true, or is it not true?
Dr. Reese, would you like to respond?
She asks a question. I would like to bring up the issue of, once again, she knows how to attack, but she doesn't know how to create solutions. No, what I want to talk about is she made a very important issue about non-discrimination in the workplace, that she has protected that. And in fact, you voted for the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which would have ensured equal pay for women as with men, and you voted against that. So I can't let you get away with all these false claims that you're making.
Dr. Reese, I know you've never been in business. You don't understand, but it's like women are paid. There are equal pay laws already on the books.
Every physician is a business.
Yes, I'm rebutting if I might.
Every physician is a
Doctor,
business, and they
let her
deserve
rebut,
that
and we're going to
respect.
wrap up this topic. Congresswoman, please.
You know what? Let me tell you what women are really concerned about, Dr. Reese. They're concerned about security. They're concerned about national security. They're concerned about domestic security. They want to know they can pay their bills. The Lilly Ledbetter Pay Act was nothing than a political ploy straight out of Nancy Pelosi. You didn't answer the question, would you vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker or not?
We are out
We
of
know
time.
the answer.
We could go on for hours, clearly, but unfortunately the hour is quickly coming to a close. It's time now for the last words from our candidates. Dr. Ruiz, you're up first.
Thanks again to KMIR and the Desert Sun for hosting this debate, and a special thanks to those of you who devoted time to watching it. Engaged and informed voters are so essential to a successful democracy. As candidates, we owe it to you to tell you who we are and where we differ. The freedom to disagree and speak our minds is the most American of traditions and values. But there is a big difference between disagreeing and character assassination. Congresswoman, I disagree with your views and priorities, but I don't question your patriotism, and I think it's a shame that you question mine. That's at the heart of what's wrong with Washington. How do you expect to solve America's problems if you don't even believe in the right of your opponents to express their views without calling them un-American? The Congresswoman and I do have very different views, and we heard a lot of them tonight at their core. The differences are about who we stand up for. The Congresswoman stands up for billionaires and companies that ship jobs overseas at the expense of the middle class and retirees. We've all heard a lot about job creators tonight, and Congresswoman Bono Mack likes to use that phrase in previous talks about as a debating weapon and in her speeches as if anyone were actually against creating jobs. We're all for job creators. The problem is that Congresswoman Bono Mack has lost touch with who the real job creators are. I think our teachers who give our kids the skills they need to go to college and get a job, I think they are job creators. But Congresswoman Bono Mack voted to cut education by $115 billion. I think a middle-class family that can afford to buy a house is a job creator, especially in our area where construction is such an important part of the economy. But the Ryan budget that Congresswoman Bono Mack voted for would have increased taxes on the middle class by $1,400 a year. I think a company that hires American workers is a job creator. But Congresswoman Bono Mack voted to give tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas. And to add insult to injury, she spent over $80,000 of taxpayer money on her own luxury car and voted 9 times to raise her own pay. Washington has changed Mary Bono Mack, and she's lost touch with the people she's supposed to represent. The seniors who count on Medicare and Social Security, the families that work hard every day to build a better life for their children, the homeowners trying to make the next mortgage payments. Those are the people I want to give voice to. I would be honored to have your vote. God bless you, and God bless America.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ruiz. Congresswoman, you have the last word tonight.
Thank you, Gino. I'd like to thank KMIR-6 and the Desert Sun for hosting tonight's debate. And I'd like to thank all of you who are watching at home tonight. I want to thank you for the support you've given me and the tremendous honor of being your Congresswoman. We all know that today, America faces tough challenges. The world is dangerous and unstable. Economies are failing. America's unemployment rate is too high, and our quality of life is shrinking. We can and we must do better. I believe in America. I believe in our people, and I believe in our future. We faced difficult times before, and we've always come through better and more united, and we will again. There are so many stark differences between my opponent and me. The most fundamental difference is how we view the role of government. I believe free markets and a free people go hand in hand. Government should be a guardian of our freedoms and our liberties, because individual freedoms must be protected. My opponent not only believes in a bigger government, he has campaign donors who illustrate just how far to the left he is willing to go. Nancy Pelosi has poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into his campaign. He has received financial support from Sean Penn, a man who is close to Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez, who's no friend of America. Dr. Ruiz even received support from the infamous billionaire Soros family that has already poured millions into left-wing radical causes throughout the world. Dr. Ruiz represents one of the most far-left candidates to ever seek a congressional office. His history and his involvement with radical groups are shocking. But I want your support and your vote, not because of everything that is wrong with Dr. Ruiz, but because you and I share a belief about what is right with America. We know that by controlling government spending, reducing taxes, and eliminating the overreach of government, we will unleash the spirit and the power of American small businesses and entrepreneurs. Freedom, free markets, and a free people will always prevail. I ask you tonight for your vote, so together we will continue to build and fight for a better America. That is my commitment to you. Thank you, God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. And we'd like to thank Congresswoman Mary Bono Mack and Dr. Ruiz for joining us tonight. We covered a lot of ground, certainly some key exchanges, and we thank you for your time in this very important debate and this very important upcoming